We can probably spend many hours discussing government and the economy, but unfortunately, we don't have all the time in the world. So we're going to talk about some other few things when it comes to the government and its role in our economy. So let's start by reviewing what we've learned last lecture. We can divide all the roles of government into three parts. Governments should make markets possible by creating institutions, defining and protecting property rights, creating infrastructure, and providing legal services. Governments should help us to deal with market failures, such as providing public goods where private firms would fail to produce those, and helping to deal us with externalities. And also, government should redistribute the wealth. We left that last question as an open-ended question. We're really not going to be able to solve the problem of the wealth distribution. In somebody's opinion, it's always going to be not enough, and in somebody's is always going to be too much. So we'll leave it as a food for thought. Does government really limit itself to these roles? No, not necessarily. In many cases, government may help the markets. In some cases, government chooses to implement policies under influence of special groups. So that's the main reason why government actually does more than we probably want it to. When it comes to the efficiency, we say that unless the markets are failing, like in case of externality and public goods, there's no really reason for the government to produce the good. As we know, that's not always the case. Here I want to make sure that we understand the difference between providing and producing the good. We're actually talking about no need for the government to produce the good, so to actually make the good. Providing is slightly a different story. Government can provide the good and hire a private firm to produce the good, such as in the case with roads. A lot of times private companies make the roads, but government is the one who orders that particular good. Right? So good is produced by a private firm, but is distributed or paid for and then collected revenue from by the government. So other examples, prisons are often operated by private companies, wireless internet, roads, things like that are produced by private company but provided by the government. So once again, when it comes to the efficiency, markets and government allocate their resources differently. Markets usually produce things that bring the highest return, or as we call it, profit. Governments usually produce things that are dictated by political process. So here we have two different intentions. We have different incentives. Firms are motivated by highest possible profit. Government, represented by government officials, are usually motivated by the political process. In a special kind of economy, in a special kind of government, which we call central economy, those planners will produce things that are dictated by the central planner politics. But those are very specific cases, like in Soviet Union, things were not dictated by political process, neither by profits, but they were mostly dictated by those people at power at a time. And we know that nothing good ever happened from that. It is necessary for the government to provide some goods. For example, mail services, army, DMV, TSA. So those are not necessarily services that we can call public goods. Those are not necessarily services that create externality, but we say it's not a bad idea for the government to make exception in some of the cases. When it comes to mail delivery, if it wasn't for the government service, some places in the United States will never see mail, or people in the faraway places will have to pay much higher price than some people who live in the more populated areas. Once again, here we come to the question of equity versus efficiency. It may not be necessarily fair to people who live in Alaska to pay much higher price to have their mail delivered. Yet, it may not be very efficient when it comes to us sending mail over there and paying exactly the same price as if we were to send a letter somewhere in Nebraska. The same with Army, DMV, and TSA services. So some of the goods may be for different reasons. We don't mind government to provide. But a lot of times there's really no need for the government to be involved in many decisions. Let's talk about those decisions.